Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Patricia Mooradian, who serves as the president and CEO of the Henry Ford. Patricia, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aaron. So good to see you again. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I am so excited to talk to you both about some unbelievably fascinating things going on at the Henry Ford, but also because I have been honored to be able to see your leadership in the creative sphere, in the art sphere over so many years, and the impact that you are having not only at the Henry Ford, but just nationally and in our field and in our industry is amazing. So I am very excited to talk to you. So
thank you so much. Appreciate all you're doing, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. So first, I think just for our audience, if you could kind of just a quick kind of, there are some who, if they're either not in the region specifically or for some reason don't fully understand the impact of the Henry Ford, could you just kind of give us a quick sense of what's involved in the Henry Ford?
So the Henry Ford is a large campus, 250 acres, National Historic Landmark. We have 6 venues on the campus, including a high school. So we have 520 kids, 9th through 12th grade, that go to school on our campus with us. We have the museum, Henry Ford Museum of American Innovation, the outdoor village, which is about a 100-acre outdoor area that has over 83 historic structures. We run the Ford Rouge Factory Tour. We have a giant screen theater, and we have the Benson Ford Research Center. So we are a very large campus focused on American history, and really using history, the past, to shape a better future. I like to say we're really all about the future. We focus on the stories of innovation, ingenuity, and resourcefulness, and we have a collection that numbers some 26 million artifacts that are really the foundation and the core for all the stories that we tell.
It's truly extraordinary, and whether it's kind of by time, wandering in the village and seeing various historic innovations, Edison's work, and all of this, to literally the Stradivarius violins that right, that we've been able to it is truly an extraordinary place. So I encourage anyone around the country, around the world, if you have not been to the Henry Ford, you absolutely need to go.
Please visit.
Yes.
We're close to the airport and easy to get to.
So. Awesome. So in the context of all of that, you're always, of course, doing new things. And there is this project of the Jackson House. And so just wondering, could you just kind of just quickly explain, just historically, why is the Jackson House important? And you are moving it, or have moved it, to the Henry Ford. And,
right.
And so if you could just describe that process. So just its quick impact, why is it important for historical?
First of all, we are a collecting institution, so we're always acquiring artifacts. And because we have historic structures and a history of having historic structures in Greenfield Village, it is something that we have expertise in maintaining and preserving. And it came to us in February of 22 that there was a historic structure, very important structure in Selma, Alabama, called the Jackson House, that the sole owner of that home was interested in preserving it in perpetuity. Her name is Joanna Jackson, so we refer to the house as the Jackson House. And it was the structure that played an incredibly pivotal role in the Selma movement, which was a sustained effort to ensure that all Americans would have the civil and voting rights that were promised to them. So it was the house where Dr. Martin Luther King used as a safe haven for him and all his colleagues and fellow activists to be safe, so that they could really work on planning the march from Selma to Montgomery in 1965.
It's truly extraordinary, and as you describe that, especially in thinking about the impact that you not only have on entire communities, but especially for young people, and just imagining a young person having the opportunity to be in that space and to think about the impact of its history and how inspiring that could be for them to think about social impact or things that they might feel
Right.
they want to do. And so that kind of then takes me to, that's amazing and that's incredible. And of course, the ultimate impact will be incredibly impactful. But logistically, and of course, so many in our audience, are running organizations, are doing different things. So logistically, how do you move a house from Alabama to Michigan? How does this work?
It was an incredible task. We had to first find out if it was possible. So we had a team of people, our own internal experts, as well as civil engineers and people in different firms that are familiar with moving structures and moving historic structures. When we realized it was possible, we continued our work with Joanna to firm up the plan to move it. There was a lot of work that we had to do nationally with a lot of people and organizations to get input and feedback about the best way to make this happen. The house was literally cut in two and put on a flatbed and moved two halves. The roof, the chimney, the porch, etc., were removed piece by piece, preserved, and then the house was wrapped in protective wrapping and completely supported inside. But the interesting thing is, when we acquire an artifact, it's pretty exciting. We got an artifact of some significance. This house is considered an artifact to us, but it was completely chock full of all of the many of the original things that were there during that time in 1965. The family knew the importance of what was taking place, and they saved and preserved everything. So along with getting the house, we got all the contents. So we first had to empty the house. It was about 7 truckloads of contents, including the chair that Dr. King was sitting in when LBJ gave his famous speech. And he watched it there from the house on the TV. It included the dining room table where he sat and ate his meals with his fellow colleagues, the bed he slept in, his pajamas, a whole host of things that are so significant to telling this story. And so we emptied the house first, of course, sent these 7 truckloads of containers very carefully packed up here, and they are currently being sorted through and documented and registered and photographed and preserved by our team of curators and conservators. And then we started on disassembling the house. And so the interior of the house had to be reinforced so the structure was solid for its ride here. The incredible part, Aaron, was every state has different requirements for large, wide loads. And so we had to go through at least, I think it was about 5 states in order to get it to Michigan, and each state had different requirements. So we had to learn what those requirements were. We had to document different things. We had to wait at the border for different state troopers and go-aheads. They were giving us the go-ahead at every state border. So the first trip up took 9 days. So if you were driving it, you could do it in 1 day, maybe 1.5. It took 9 days. And the second trip, we had to go back for the second half, and that took only 4. I think they became familiar with us. And then we had to secure it along the way. So we had to have our security team in a rented motorhome follow it, because the drivers were only driving it. And when they stopped to sleep at night, we had to make sure it was protected. And so we had a whole security team. We had cameras. We hired some documentary folks and our own internal folks to document the entire thing. So we're making a documentary of the whole project as well.
It's truly an extraordinary just undertaking and effort, and one of the things too that at least comes through for me is this level of collaboration that clearly was at play with so many partners. And not only that, of course, the owner, Joanna, and all of this and just to me speaks to kind of all of this work that we do in the creative space, and especially the arts ecosystem, that the things that are most successful, most impactful ultimately seem to involve these collaborations, where there's not even ever one institution, let alone one person kind of doing something.
Right. No, and we had to collaborate with city governments in Selma, with the state government, with all the state and local representatives, with our Congress people, from both states, the state historical societies, a variety of different foundations we were consulting with for input and insight. But the exciting part for me, Erin, about this project is that millions of people forever will get to hear firsthand, to feel the stories that took place in this house. And it's so inspiring when we're uncovering so many really interesting details, not just about the house, but about what transpired in the house, which is really the story. And there are so many stories that we're going to be able to tell about community, about the importance of family, about the importance of collaboration, as you just mentioned, the importance of women in the movement. There are just so many stories that are coming out for us. We are going to do our very best to communicate and give people that firsthand experience and the opportunity to reflect and to connect the dots between what happened then and what's happening in our world today, and how we can make those connections and learn from the past in order to help shape a better future, which is really the goal and the mission of the Henry Ford.
Again, it really is extraordinary. And one of those things too that I love that you were sharing is that this is a story. In other words, that these structures, these artifacts that you're able to collect and then share with the public are stories. And so whether it's music or whether it's literally the Jackson House, is able to share these stories that are so pivotal and, as you said, inspirational.
Well, there's so many stories of courage. When you read what took place, and Joanna's mother wrote a book about it, and it's called The House by the Side of the Road, which we will republish when the house is open to the public in June of 2026. That's what we're shooting for. The home is now on the foundation that we built a foundation for in Greenfield Village. And we are working very hard to connect it to some of the other stories of structures in Greenfield Village. So we have at least half a dozen structures in the village that have direct connections to Black heritage and the stories of courage and bravery and resilience that took place in some of those structures. And so the house is being well positioned to connect the dots, including to Abraham Lincoln's courthouse where he practiced law. So there are so many different ways to connect the dots for what took place in the past and how it continues to unfold today, including in the museum with our With Liberty and Justice for All exhibit and the Rosa Parks bus, which is on the floor of the museum. And that, her act of courage took place in 1955, which was 10 years prior to what took place with the Voting Rights Act. So a lot of really, really important stories. And I'll tell you, we are doing our very best to reach out to the community locally and nationally and in Alabama to preserve their stories and to collect their stories and to make it available to everyone. So we're documenting everything digitally. Even right now, people can go onto YouTube and see the house in movement as it was disassembled and moved. They can see videos about the house. You can hear Joanna just very passionately speak about what happened in that house. She was a 5-year-old little girl at the time. And when she first spoke to us, Erin, it was so great. This was in February of 22. We met her for the first time by a Zoom call similar to this. And she said, she referred to Dr. King as Uncle Martin. When she first said Uncle Martin, I thought, Uncle Martin? Because, who calls Dr. Martin Luther King Uncle Martin? It was just such a precious moment. And it took me a minute to go, oh my gosh, she called him Uncle Martin. That is cool. Because we were hearing that for the first time.
It's really truly extraordinary. And also the context of some of the other things to experience at the Henry Ford, and then even seeing chronologically, here's what happened, and to literally kind of feel it because you're literally in the presence of those spaces,
Right.
is amazing. Well, unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but I always like to ask of all of my guests, right? Obviously, this is inspirational work. The people who you're able to work with at the Henry Ford and all that is truly amazing. But there's got to be, of course, some tough days where things are not going well, something happened during transport, et cetera. And just wondering, as a leader, especially in the creative space, just wondering any key mechanisms or methods that you have for when there are those challenging times that
Yeah.
help you as a leader kind of carry forward.
Yeah. Well, yes, there's been many in the past 5 years, as you know. And of course, this project presented many challenges at a national level and on the level of the institution. I'm really fortunate to have an amazing board of trustees, and they're very active. And I know who I can call to get advice based on whatever the issue is. And I also have a lot of connections with other museum professionals and CEOs. I've reached out to especially on this project, to different professionals at foundations and at other museum organizations for advice and direction and guidance. This project has brought our team very close together. And one of the things that is important to me as a leader is transparency. And so I'll put it right out there and say, we need help. How can you help us with this? And the community comes together. I mean, we needed help when we first disassembled the house and brought it to Michigan. We had to store it until the foundation was ready. And I called our board chair, and he made a few phone calls, and within a few days, we had located a warehouse large enough and a community member who was committed to the cause that really came to help us. So it's important, I think, as a leader to say, I need help, and to then know who to go to get that help.
It is truly extraordinary. Patricia Mooradian, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything you do, and thank you for being on the show.
I'm so honored and humbled to be part of your show and to be part of this wonderful cultural community. Thank you.